running.
Hi, I'm Marcus Coward, and this is Wake Up New Bedford. I'm here with Abigail Rose, or Abby.
Hi.
Okay. Abby, great to have you.
It's great to have you. Oh, that was horrible.
No worries. No, you're happy to be here.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And so, tell me a little bit about yourself, Abby. So, where are you from?
I am born and raised in Acushnet.
Okay.
So yeah, all of really the greater New Bedford area is always what I say is my home, and in the
Sure.
South Coast.
And so, do you have siblings? Do you have a big family?
I do. I have two older brothers that both went to New Bedford High. My parents are all from New Bedford too.
Sure.
So we've always been in this area, but yeah. Yep. two older
And
brothers.
did you also go to New Bedford High?
I did not. No, I went
Okay.
to Fairhaven High.
Fairhaven High.
Yes.
So the castle. Okay.
The castle, right? Yeah, the
And
big
so,
castle.
What is it like inside? Is it like as big as people think it is, or?
Not really, no. It has some cool rooms that are still like historic to, I guess, like how it was built.
Sure.
Because it was a mansion at one point.
It looks like one.
Yeah, given to the town by Henry Huddleston, I believe is the story.
Interesting.
So yeah, and then when I went, they had extended a part of the school too. So they had like
Okay.
the gym and everything over there.
Sure.
It was pretty cool. Some of the bigger rooms were pretty historic, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so going there, what was your favorite subject?
Ooh, that is a good question. I love history. I'm like a
History.
big history buff, so
Okay.
that's probably my favorite that I did, yeah.
Okay. Would you say that was your best too?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say I was pretty good at school.
Okay,
I
great.
definitely wasn't the top student,
Sure,
valedictorian out of the whole school. But yeah, I enjoyed school. I love to learn new things. So that's why I feel like history too, I think just goes into a lot of like real life things that
Absolutely.
we need to know now. So that's, was always one of my favorite subjects.
And then from there, did you go on to college?
I did. I went to Johnson and Wales. However, I did not finish there.
Sure.
I got into real estate like once COVID happened and kind of forced me in that direction and got into real estate and kind of went running with that since.
So in high school, did you have a sense of what you wanted to do as a career? Were you already thinking about real estate?
So in high school, I actually really didn't know what I wanted to do. I always knew that like I wanted to be a business owner in some sort of capacity.
Okay.
However, I went to school for fashion merchandising.
I can tell.
Specifically.
Okay.
Thank you. So that was really like my biggest passion, and I always wanted to. I made my own clothes when I was younger as well,
Really?
so I loved to do that for a while.
Okay.
Really liked interior design too, so I kind of battled with that one. And then, so actually my family owns my real estate company. We're family owned and operated.
That's amazing.
So Rose Homes, that's
Yeah.
my last name.
Okay.
And that just like once COVID happened and I lost my job, I noticed that the real estate world was not stopping or ending, and my parents were still super busy and masked up and out there, and I was like, okay, I finally need to go and like take these courses and do this thing.
Sure.
And then like right when I got licensed, I just like truly went off running, and I found a passion for it. I love it. So
And so did your parents start this company?
they did.
And so how long ago? How long has it been going?
So they've been in the real estate industry for about like 26 years. It was like
Wow.
right after I was born that they got into it. But they opened up their own company in 2018.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like right before COVID, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Okay.
then really right before they opened up their business, like front of it, because it was out of their house for a while, like
Sure.
just the two of them. And then once we got our office in Fairhaven, COVID happened like a month later after our like grand opening.
Okay.
So real estate never stopped though.
So it didn't really impact the business
It did
like
not
that?
impact the business at all. Actually,
Wow.
interest rates were the lowest that they've ever been
Sure.
historically. So it was actually a really busy time.
Sure.
Of course, it was untraditional of the things that we were doing, the way that we were showing houses and stuff. But thankfully, you know, their business, of course, when it first happened, it was scary. You know, the world was so unknown and what was going to happen. So it was scary, but however, we prospered through it, and it was actually a really good time for the real estate industry.
Okay, that's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, right?
And so I guess before we dive in, when you were younger and you saw your parents in the real estate market, then did they not put any pressure on you to also get involved, or they were pretty supportive of you wanting to go into fashion?
So they did. They had always said it. However, real estate is really tough, just like owning any business. I mean, they raised 3 of us kids working independently together, and real estate is such a thing where, like, you know, you don't get paid until you close on a house, and anything can happen in between that. It's not just an hourly job. So having 2 parents that did that, I saw their struggles. They worked together through real estate during the housing crash of 2008 when they were putting my first brother through college.
Wow.
So like it was definitely something. I saw them. I saw the struggles, I saw the highs and lows, but it was also a great career that, you know, my dad could also coach us when we were kids too, because it had like flexibility, and they were able to be as involved as they could with us. So they always kind of said it to me, but I never wanted to be the kid that followed in their parents' footsteps.
Really?
I always wanted my own thing. I never wanted somebody to think that like I was given something almost.
Sure, yeah.
So that's why fashion was so different. I always loved it as a kid. I always played dress up and all these things. And like I said, I made some of my own clothes too. And then, I was, so finally, like once I lost my job from COVID, they were like, okay, like you took these classes when you were 18, like you've got to go and you've got to do it. So thankfully I had their push. Sure. Because within my first month I met my first seller, which was just a complete total stranger. Yeah. And just really went from there. So.
And so I was talking to another real estate agent, or what's the term that you prefer, like real estate agent or realtor?
Or realtor, whichever one though.
And so. And that they were saying that during COVID, people weren't really doing like home inspections because of like COVID, and they kind of just wanted to get into their home almost like as fast as possible. Yeah. You saw that?
Absolutely, yeah. With the lower interest rates, it was just so competitive for buyers that they were really doing anything to get into that house. So they were waiving the home inspections. Sure. They were trying to do like appraisal waivers. They were putting in so much more money over asking price. So it was a bit of a chaotic time for, you know, really for home buyers, especially like a first time home buyer too. Yeah. However, now things have stabled out a little bit, but you still do get that. Like in the Plymouth County area, I have some buyers where things are just flying like absolutely off the table right now. Really? Yep. So it's still a busy market, and it's still also something that it's just the same supply and demand chain as everything, where we have a lot of demand and not much supply in homes. Okay. So yeah. And so does being a saleswoman come naturally to you, do you feel like? Or was that something that you had to learn, you know, how to sell? Yeah, that is a really good question. So I don't know if I would really consider myself so much of a salesperson, but I think that I just really am like more of a people person. Okay. And that's what I think really helps, of the fact that like I know all of my stuff with real estate, which is great. However, as a realtor, you don't really have a product that you sell. So it's not like a car dealership where you have like all the cars lined out. You really have to find that buyer or seller to trust you with one of their largest purchases ever. Yeah. And then you go from there to find the product. You know, so with the buyer, right? Okay. So they're more of like, you're kind of selling yourself of like, hey, I'm trustworthy. Hey, I'm super knowledgeable. This is what I know how to do, and this is what I'm going to get done for you. Yeah. Same thing with the seller too. You have to come as like, you know, this is what I'm going to do for you to get this home sold. Okay. And I think that's what really helps. Yeah. And just like, so many people are real estate agents, which is great, but it is highly competitive, especially in our area. Yeah. And it's just super important that if you are a buyer or seller, that you're vetting out your realtor and making sure that they just truly have your best interest and that they really know what they're doing. And there's a lot of key questions that you can ask them to make sure of that. But that's just like the real estate test. It really doesn't teach you much that you need to know. Interesting. So it's important to have like a good brokerage to work for that gets you out in the field, and then you really start to learn the stuff that, you know, to be that best expert for your clients. So it's interesting that you say that you're not really selling the home, but you're selling yourself along with essentially matchmaking the seller with the buyer. Yeah. And making sure that you come across as trustworthy. Because I feel like a lot of people might just think it's another sales job like selling a car, but that totally makes sense that it's not so much. Yeah. I mean, some people, the way that they treat it, so I always say, like, so many of my clients, they come from social media and they start off as strangers and they're referrals from somebody else. So this is somebody who starts off as like a pure stranger. And they're trusting me with their largest investment, you know, that they might ever make. A house is expensive, you know? So it's really important to establish those relationships. And I always say too that we start off as strangers and we leave the closing table as friends.
Absolutely.
And I think my clients really like value that. You know, they don't feel like just another number.
I bet.
Where it's like, all right, number 26, like here comes the next one. They're like, Abby really values me
and cares.
She cares, and she made me feel knowledgeable. Like I learned so much from this process, and she reaches out to me still after the closing is long gone. You know, so those are just, I think, the special things that I just really value with my clients, and I hope that they feel that way too.
And so you mentioned that there are some key questions that a buyer should be using to vet their realtor. What are some of those questions that you think of?
So I would really ask them more of like, what is your process? So even really with a seller. So I do a consultation for both sides. So if somebody calls me to sell their house, I have a full seller consultation. And if somebody reaches out to me as a buyer, I have a full buyer's consultation.
Interesting.
So I go through, step by step of exactly what I'm gonna do, because I think it's really important to lay out the expectations for your clients.
Sure.
So I say, you know, this is what you can be expecting from me. So if I am gonna sell your house, this house is never gonna be on lockbox. I'm actually gonna be here present selling the home. The home doesn't just sell itself,
of course.
You know? And
like
professional photography and drone and all of that stuff is kind of just expected at this point. However, it's not always done at all. If you look through Zillow, you'll know. I think that that's kind of almost still like a bare minimum of stuff that like what a realtor should do. It's about like selling the home, selling the experience of the home, talking about it. There's no one that knows the home more than the seller. However, there's no one, then the second person is your realtor. And I've actually sold homes that I know more than the seller does. Because I go in there knowledgeable and I make sure that I take like a whole tour around the house. And so before I go, I pull the public records, which gives me the basics. Square footage, acreage, year of the house, all that stuff. Is it, you know, septic or sewer? So I already know that stuff. But then I go in, I'm like, okay, give me a tour. You know, what has been updated? What are these floors? What is that? But sometimes clients don't know what things are.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's where I come in as the knowledgeable expert and goes, oh, okay, that countertop is quartz. Or did you know that underneath these carpets, there's actually hardwood? And some, you know, sellers like, no, I had no idea, because they're selling maybe their, you know, passed away, you know, mother's house or something. And I'm like, no, I can tell just under the basement, you know, with the floors, the way that the nails are in, like there's hardwood floors.
Wow,
and
that's
you have
really knowledgeable. Okay.
It's an important thing that you try, you learn as you go. That's why I make sure that I attend every home inspection. And also I have just great brokers that have been in the business for years that I made sure that I, you know, shadowed them and learned from the best people that I could to be the most knowledgeable person. But those things are super important because that's a huge value increase to the house. Like hardwood floors versus carpet, that's huge. And my seller had no idea. So yeah, those are the things that just vet them out and see kind of what they know.
And so I have two questions in mind. One, if you can talk a little bit more about what a broker is. So we'll start there.
So a real estate broker is usually the person that like owns the real estate company. So when you have your broker's license, you're able to be the head of the real estate company. And then you're able to have like real estate agents underneath you. So it's a different type of license that you need and a different course and test that you go through. And
is that something that interests you down the line? Like, is that an aim for most realtors?
I think so. I don't know about most realtors. I definitely would like to be a broker one day. I mean, it is a huge responsibility.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And I understand that, and I don't take that lightly. So I love what I do right now of being just a great resource, you know, for my clients. But it is something that I think that I will pursue in the future.
And so the second question was, you obviously must have learned a lot from your parents, who were also real estate agents and helped get you into the business. But were they the main people who coached you and taught you what you know, or was there someone else that also taught you?
They were the main people. My dad, both of them are super knowledgeable. However, my dad just knows everything. So I like he's the type, he's been in so many aspects. He was, you know, a builder at one point, so he was in construction. So he's the one that knows, like, he knocks on the wall and he knows that that's the supporting beam and structure, like, right there. So, like, that wall can't be knocked down. He's the one that knows right away, like, okay, this septic would probably be installed here, and this is where the leach field is. And he really just knows so much. So even our agents that work for us, he's just a tremendous resource to them. And so many people like, hey, Phil, this is an older home. These are things I don't really know about it. Can you please come with me? And he's just amazingly knowledgeable. And we don't give him enough credit, but he really just, that guy knows his stuff.
Okay, no, that's great. So, no, that's an amazing resource.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, I know you said that you didn't want anything handed to you, okay? But would you say that you adopted a lot of their methodology as far as for how to sell, or did you end up coming up with new ways in order, like, when you brought up drones and when you brought up pictures, is that something that your parents were already doing, or are there new things that you put into your own repertoire?
There's definitely new things for sure. Like I said, a lot of my clients come from social media. So, I mean, I started when I had like just turned 21.
Sure.
So nobody in my demographic or my sphere of influence was buying homes. Nobody can afford it. A lot of my friends still aren't doing it yet, you know? So I was like, okay, how do I find strangers to trust me? And the thing that a lot of people thought is like, oh, your parents own the company, so they're just going to give stuff to you. Well, they're still active realtors, so they want their own clients, which is great, as they should. Like, they've earned the business. However, though, like, my family goes to my parents. My brother's friends go to my parents.
Really?
My parents' friends go to my parents. Like, they've been doing it forever, like, as they should. But
I guess
that's the thing. So I had to be like, okay, I don't have any of those resources. None of my friends are buying. How do I go and get the business? And how do I find these people to trust a 21-year-old with one of their largest assets? So I really had to branch out and, like, okay, social media. My first client I met at a protest. It was actually a Black Lives Matter protest. Met her, and she was like, I have a house to sell. And I was like, oh, wow. You know, I wasn't even like, I don't know, I wasn't even almost like ready yet. And I was like, I was a month in, and I had met with her, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to tell her that I'm new, and I'm also not going to tell her how old I was. I kind of wanted to, like, after the process, almost like shock her. I was like, hey, just so you know, this is the first house I've ever sold. And she wrote me a beautiful 3-paragraph review after.
Wow.
I think I almost cried. It was amazing. And I'm actually working with the same girl right now to help her find another home.
That's amazing.
Almost 5 years later. So it's amazing. And she called me too, and I was like, thank you so much for remembering and, like, trusting me. She's like, oh my, like, of course, you know? But it was just that keeping, like, front of people's minds too on social media and building my brand. And, like, even videos too, and doing stuff like this of people like, okay, who is Abby Rose, and who's beyond this screen of just like, oh, I sold a house. So I try to do that with people, like, get to know me a little bit. You know?
And so you had to learn social media on your own. That's not something that your parents were into that much?
No, they definitely weren't into it very much. I mean, they had their own, like, you know, basics. They had a company, you know, their basic company Facebook pages and Google pages and stuff like that. But I was really like, okay, what do I do? And, like, reels were just kind of coming out at that time, and like, how do I show my knowledge to these strangers? You know, how do I get these clients? So a lot of it was like reaching out to businesses and doing joint, like, giveaways and stuff to get, like, more followers. And that was just really start from the basics of how to build a brand and a page. And then I started to get, you know, quite a bit of clientele from that. So it was awesome.
And you really do have to be creative and be adaptable in operating on social media, because it's so competitive in real life with other realtors, but it's also very competitive for people's attention on social media.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they say that now you have to touch somebody, which means, like, you know, virtual touches of how much they see you, like 16 times for them to remember you. Because we are just inundated with so much information all the time. And then obviously there's people that are like amazing in social media, and they blow me out of the water, and I'm like, oh, save that reel. How do I maybe, like, get influence from that?
You have to learn and adapt.
You do have to learn and adapt. And it's, I mean, you know, marketing it's money, and you own your own business, and all of those things can be challenges to it. But it's definitely something that I enjoy. However, doing my own social media and all of that is almost like a whole separate job and career. Yeah, so that can be tough. But.
So with that, is there like a team? Like, do realtors really have a team, or is it really just you behind the machine of Abby Rose, the realtor?
Yeah, so some companies do work as teams, and you'll see that. However, I am just an independent.
Yeah.
So it's just me. So when you work with me, it's just me. If for some reason I couldn't make something, you know, I'm able to get one of my, somebody who works with me to be able to represent me.
Sure.
But the good thing about me, and I'm not gonna, say anything about teams because I don't know how they operate.
Sure.
But I do know that sometimes you're working with multiple people through one transaction. And to me, I have heard that can get a little confusing.
Sure.
So people just know that it's Abby. And then I have a team of mortgage lenders and attorneys and home inspectors and anything that you can imagine, I can refer to you.
Sure.
And I always work with people that I know that have done wonderful in the past. So you work with those people, but if something's getting handled, it's through me.
Yeah.
Which I think my clients like because they know exactly who is just representing them and all of that stuff.
Yeah. No, and that so many people are unknowledgeable about this process going into it.
Yeah.
And then they end up learning so much, but it can definitely be very confusing when there are different people and you don't know what they do or what exactly
and who to reach out to for what process and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's why I like to do that consultation to even start out with my clients. And then I say, hey, I am going to be there with you through step A to step Z. And I mean that genuinely. And my clients will say that too, that I handled everything. And I always say on our end, we're going to be great. However, there are there's depending if it's a buyer or a seller, there's another party on the other side. And sometimes that agent could possibly drop the ball or that attorney or that mortgage lender, but on our team, we are always going to be great.
Absolutely.
And if there's something where somebody who I work with, a mortgage lender, an attorney, if they drop the ball, I tell my clients, don't be ashamed to tell me. Your experience is supposed to be great with everybody who I've referred you to. So please, I will get you with somebody that's even better and able to get the job done. So.
I love setting that expectation so that they can really feel comfortable.
Well, I think that's huge. And with sales too, as we know, there are sometimes a lot of false promises, and I don't false promise anybody. So if you come to me with your pre-approval, and if I can't find you a house within that budget, I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to tell you, hey, I can't find you in that area within that budget. Of course, if I could, I would. But I want to make sure that I'm finding you a home and that you know that. So I always say my motto is that I'm not going to promise to get you to the moon if I don't have a rocket ship to put us in there.
Oh, okay. I love that. That is catchy.
And I think it's just it's just easy to set up the expectation and say yeah, absolutely. There's clients that I can sit down with. I'm like, oh, I can find you everything on that wish list. And then there's some other clients that I'm like, this is just your first home. We're going to have to go for a condo, we're gonna have to get something smaller, but after that, you're gonna build all this equity in it and you're gonna call me in a few years and we're gonna sell it and we're gonna get you into this home that you want now.
Okay.
But if I can't find it for you, I'm not gonna tell you that I can. It makes an unhappy client, and I'd rather have my clients be extraordinarily happy and surprised that the process was as easy as it was and it went even better and I found them exactly what I told them I could find them. So that's really key.
And so you bring up something interesting I haven't really thought of before, of first-time home buyers setting unrealistic expectations.
Yes.
Do you come into that often?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, talk about that.
So the first-time home buyer, those are some of my favorite clients to work with because,
really?
there's just nothing more exciting than buying your first home.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Sure.
So I have a lot of clients that sit down with me and they don't know what type of property they want. Sometimes they're like, hey, I really want a multifamily, but I don't really want to take care of it much, and maybe I kind of want that dream home. And so I'm able to say, hey, this is what a multifamily ownership looks like. And this is what single family ownership looks like. This is the benefits. This is the cons.
Sure.
And they're able, I help them weigh out their options. Then sometimes too, my clients are looking for both. And they're like, okay, whatever I can kind of find within my budget. So budget determines a lot of things for my clients.
Of course.
If my first consultation, they have not gotten pre-approved yet, I don't get too much into their wish list because I hate to get somebody super excited and then we get an approval back that says we can't do those things.
Yeah.
So I kind of say have an idea, have a goal, we're gonna get you pre-approved, then your pre-approval is gonna determine really where you can buy the house and what type of house that you want.
Sure.
And then from there, we have that approval that, like I said, it kind of determines, and we get more into the nitty gritty. Okay, this approval is great. This opens you up to a lot of more surrounding towns. Which ones do you prefer?
Yeah.
And first-time home buyers, though, their expectations are awesome, but I also say, like, this is a starter home, and that is perfectly okay. You know, you don't need to build your first home. And I know a lot of people, like, their parents did that in the 90s, in the 80s, when things were really affordable. Like, it was just such a different time back then, which is awesome. And I love that my clients have goals and aspirations. But I tell them, and some of them, they can achieve that right off the bat. First homes, I've sold first homes, and it's the new builds, it's the this, which is awesome.
Sure.
And then I have other clients that I say, this is a stepping stone.
Okay.
So this is literally, we step one, and then we sell it. Sometimes they can even keep it and rent it out, depending the type of property.
Sure.
And we go from there. But that really is real estate too, is I like to, you know, refer to it as it's always a stepping stone, kind of one step at a time.
And so when you say that to these buyers, then do they get disappointed by that, or do they get excited? What is their reaction when you say that?
Sometimes a little bit of both, but I think it's more excited. I think that they like that somebody is so knowledgeable about the market and what they can afford within that price, you know, point.
Sure.
And I'm never like, I'm always excited to work with my clients no matter what their price point is.
Yeah.
So I know, like, hey, I'm going to get you into that condo, and then in 4 years from now, you're going to call me, and I'm going to get you into that colonial that you really want. Like,
Sure.
I'm excited, you know, I'll never forget about them. So I think I make the process always super exciting for my clients. It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And a lot of people come to me too, and they're really overwhelmed. And so many people, like, reach out to me on Instagram and Facebook, and they're like, hey, Abby, I have no idea where to start, you know, and I saw your post. Can you help? And I'm like, oh, absolutely. Like, let's sit down and let's really lay out all of the steps, and I'm going to make it super easy for you. So.
And so you said that first home buyers are really fun, and especially it's very meaningful for this first purchase. But do you find people who aren't first home buyers and have some experience that the process is easier, or are they all kind of the same kind of difficulty?
It can be a little bit easier for them. However, sometimes it can be actually a little bit tougher as a realtor.
Okay, talk about
there
that.
are people that will reach out to you and they think, you know, this is their third house, so they know everything that real estate could possibly have to offer.
Sure.
So that can be a little tricky sometimes, because it could be the same thing that they come to me and they want all of these things, and I'm like, no, that's all, like, I love that you want all of those things. However, like, that's really not feasible. So like, but I can find you without maybe this, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Without maybe the granite, without maybe one of those garages,
maybe
in this city instead of this town. And sometimes it can be a little bit more of combative. But however, I mean, things have changed quickly. Like, the economy has changed quickly. So people that bought their house even 6 years ago are shocked by now what the prices are. So sometimes when they're coming back into the market, that's hard for them to say, no, I'm not gonna spend this, but I want the same exact thing for the house that I own now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but they're not the same prices, you know what I mean? So this is what we have to do. However, though, everybody is usually pretty easy, and they're like, okay, I know that you have my best interest, and that's what's most important, is creating that trust with your clients.
Yes.
And like, I know that you have the best interest for me, you know, and like, okay, this makes sense. And sometimes you just have to prove it to them too. Sometimes I have to say, hey, here's all the listings in this price range of you know, what you like, same type of house that you have now, but this is the price of it now versus 8 years ago.
Sure.
And sometimes you're like, whoa, that's different, but it just is what it is, you know? So, but the good thing though, if it's a seller, they'll have so much equity out of their house.
Sure.
So it's like, okay, but you're sitting on so much equity, and we're gonna roll that equity over into the new house. So, so it'll be, you know, by then they like that.
Okay, no, that makes so much sense. And so that really wraps up part one. And so we have so much left to talk about in part two. We haven't touched on a lot of topics that I want to ask you about.
Okay.
And so thank you everyone for watching. In part two, we'll find a little bit more about what she's doing right now, how the market is, some of her challenges, and some of the feel-good stories that she experiences by being a realtor. and looking a little bit into the future for Abby Rose here. So thank you so much for watching, and catch us in part 2 on Wake Up New Bedford.